Thank you so much for joining us for today's expert talk on the topic of identifying and avoiding scam on Upwork. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be available for reviewing at any time on the community events page. I'll be posting that link as well as a bunch of others throughout the presentation in the chat section, so keep an eye out for those. And just please be aware that the content that we're discussing here is not a substitute for legal advice. In the event of experiencing falling victim to any scam or fraud, please do contact a legal professional for advice. This is more on the precursor, avoiding an awareness. Okay, so my name is Will Simpson. I am an Upwork events manager and also a freelance graphic designer on the platform itself. And we're fortunate to be joined today by Upwork Director of Trust and Safety, Caitlin McNerney. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on this important topic today.
Thank you, Will, and thank you for everybody joining us. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So we're going to be covering a few topics today. We're going to look at the current situation of scam as it's affecting independent professionals. We're going to look at how to best identify these potential scam postings and then how to report them if you encounter them. All very important steps. And again, this is being recorded, so don't feel you have to absorb it all immediately. You can always review it at another time. And at the very end, we will have a time for a bit of Q&A. So let's go ahead and dive in. So for the context of this presentation, we're defining scam as a job post or subsequent communications originating from a job post with the intent of the client to defraud an independent professional out of money. Okay, so a very specific context that we're classifying that as. And folks, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section. The chat section moves a little bit quick for me, a little bit harder to follow. So feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A. We'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. So for many of us here on this event have received a notification from Upwork recently warning us to the increase of scam occurrences so far in 2022. Today, we want to ensure that you're all equipped to identify these scams. Now, Caitlin, can you speak to what's going on and who this is affecting?
Absolutely, Will, because I think that why is so important here. But why is this happening and why now? So in line with the industry at large, Upwork has been experiencing an unprecedented spike in scam job posts since late January. This actually began with an increase in Q4 of 2021, which was an expected increase that we typically see towards the end of the year. And we had prepared for in advance with additional staffing of our scam ops teams. But then we saw a secondary increase then again in the new year. Many of you may be asking why scam has increased on platforms that host jobs in the most recent months. This stems from the record number of individuals who left their jobs in the United States during the Great Resignation last year. And that's led to higher numbers of job seekers since. So while scam job postings are certainly not new, the macro environment became much more attractive to bad actors over the last couple of months. So within Trust and Safety, we've validated this as the driver behind rising scam activity and have confirmed this based on intelligence and communication coming out of the US Federal Bureau of Investigations. The increased attractiveness of job seekers as potential targets, paired with new norms resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. You can think of such things as phone and video interviews becoming so much more routine now because of COVID-19, but that's allowed scammers' tactics to look far less unusual than they would have previously.
Absolutely, too right. They've gotten a lot more sophisticated with the increased amount of traffic for them to approach. So let's take a look at what does Upwork do to combat this scam that's happening. So I know that Upwork historically and currently has a very proactive approach to trust and safety on the Upwork platform. From my years of experience as a freelancer on the Upwork platform, this is one of the areas which actually sets Upwork apart from other providers in the space, from my experience. Can you speak to some of the steps and precautions that Upwork takes to prevent scam from occurring?
Absolutely. And before I just get into what we have been doing and what we're going to continue to do, I'd like to first take a second just to acknowledge the frustration that many freelancers, some of which may be on this call right now, have had in regards to knowing how to avoid these types of scams, but may have still experienced frustration from the volumes that they've seen while searching for legitimate work on the platform in recent months. Please know that the efforts to combat this are a company-wide priority for us. So now more into what Trust and Safety is doing and has been doing. So Upwork has dedicated teams that align to specific risk areas, as well as investigation specialists who focus on emerging and new risks. We also partner closely with engineering and product to build the right solutions for the platform. In regards to scam mitigation, We're approaching this in three key ways: prevention, detection, and enforcement. We know that in order to solve this problem in the near and the long term, we've got to get all three right, and all three are going to be incredibly essential. I'm going to note here that I'm going to be intentionally non-specific when we're talking about exact mitigation efforts. And that's because any public communications that we put out there on countermeasures can swiftly become available to scammers and bad actors, which would in turn limit our ability to protect good customers like yourselves. I want to note as well that the vast majority of the cases we review are generated by our internal detection systems, with proactive removal occurring at 10 times the rate of customer flags. While we, of course, value and review customer flags, they're a huge part of what we do in detecting bad actors on the platform. Our goal is that when content doesn't align with our policies or what's going to be good for our platform, we remove it before good customers ever see it. As I hope you've seen over the last several weeks, we've significantly enhanced our detections and the speed of scam job removal through significant engineering and operational investments. Please know that our work is still not done here and we're continuing efforts. Last, but certainly not least, scammers continue efforts when they succeed. By providing education such as this one today, and all looking out for each other and knowing what to look for to avoid these types of things, we can collectively thwart that success.
Absolutely. And actually, I was just recalling an example of maybe a different tier of that same automated flagging happening. Like when I'm typing a message to one of my clients, if I put a phone number in there or a website external link like that, there is a little pop-up message just saying, "Hey, be careful." And obviously that's a step before trust and safety wiping out bad ones, but that it's a good example, a visual example of us seeing, hey, that automatic flagging logic is indeed part of it. So it's good to know that that's taken even further on the back end system.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at identifying and avoiding scam postings. From what I understand, there are two prevalent methods scammers are utilizing to defraud independent professionals. Can you speak to what these typically look like and what steps we can take to identify and avoid them?
Yes, happy to. So moving freelancers off platform is one of the first objectives that scammers will take. They're aware that once their account is actioned by trust and safety, they'll be unable to continue conversing, and they don't want to lose that contact with somebody that they've started to bring in with the intent of scamming. So for this reason, they'll drive those conversations to off-platform chats, messaging, email, and so forth, as soon as that's going to be feasible for them. This is the key reason we've bolstered educational content within Dash in recent months to let our customers know that keeping communications and payment on Upwork keeps them safe. When communications move off platform, scammers are likely to be after one of two things, and sometimes even both. The first of those is personal identifiable information, which also commonly gets referred to as PII. And scammers' intent there is to then use that for future fraud tactics, whether that's on the platform or elsewhere, or they're going to try to request payment. Now, the requesting payment piece may often come in the form of promised reimbursement as opposed to a direct ask for payment, whether that's purchasing supplies or requesting payment for background checks, office equipment, things like that. So things that may otherwise seem legitimate, but we know to be very illegitimate asks. So falsified checks are then frequently sent, and while they may show as temporarily available when someone goes to deposit them, they will not clear in bank accounts. So in the interim, the scammer may request that you purchase from a vendor and refund that difference back to you. But in that time frame, that comes as a loss from that refund back. So FYI that the vendor that you may be purchasing may be also that scammer, and most likely them doubling down on payments here, because that's the same individual or someone working with them in this scheme.
Absolutely. I know I've seen examples of this personally. I had an associate of mine get a dream job looking thing where they said, "Hey, we're going to send you a brand new MacBook. All we need is a $100 deposit to make sure it comes back." And I was like, "Wow, that sounds like a really good deal. They're just going to give you one." And I'm like, I don't think so." It's clever. It's very clever.
Painfully so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's people that have fallen victim to scams should not feel bad. These are so incredibly crafty the way they're put together, and doesn't matter how intelligent you are, they're leveraging human nature against ourselves oftentimes. So it's important to be aware and taking proactive steps being on events like this. Now, while Upwork has multiple layers of security, our trust and safety team has compiled a list of red flags to look for on known red flags, which can help you stay away from the wrong jobs and malicious parties posing as clients. Our first red flag is when you notice a client has many open jobs, but no money spent. The example here may be a bit hard for some to read, so I want to point out some aspects for context. The job description seems great, no experience needed. They train new contractors and pay them weekly or bi-weekly. They then provide a direct contact email external to the Upwork platform for interested parties, a little bit of red flag there. And we can also see that they have two open jobs, but a 0% hire rate. Now that's not egregious, but it's something to keep an eye out. If they have 15 open jobs and 0% hire rate, that for sure trigger my red flag. Caitlin, can you expand upon the trust and safety recommendations on these types of red flags?
Yeah, absolutely. So these red flags are all stereotypical of scam, but some of them, as well mentioned, may just be a new client. If they have two job posts open, but haven't yet hired, that may just be someone who's coming on and has two potential areas of work that they're interested in hiring for. However, these are traits that can be used by scammers. And so what we would recommend here is just having that kind of guard up and recognizing the red flag in that moment. And from the trust or safety perspective, exercise caution when engaging with the poster of an opening like this. If they share contact information either in the job description herself or in direct messages, know that's against our terms, and again, flag it for us to review.
Absolutely. There's a lot of great questions happening in the Q&A section here, folks. I am reviewing them. I am reviewing the chat, but I'm trying to save them for the end here. So don't be offended if I don't get back to you immediately here. A lot of the questions that are being asked are about to be answered, so bear with us. The next red flag to be aware of is a very popular point of conversation in many of the events that I've hosted. When a client has an unverified payment method. You can see if a potential has a verified payment method or not on the right-hand side of the job posting in the About the Client section. They will have a little blue badge with a white check mark in it, accompanied by the payment method verified tag, if they have successfully verified their payment method. Caitlin, can you guide us through the importance of this payment verified badge and if it's a hard stopping point when considering applying for potential projects?
Yeah, I would say that this isn't a hard no-go for a stopping point. However, it is a moment to be really vigilant in those communications as well. And with that client, keep communications and again, payment on platform. When we are processing payments as Upwork, we're going to do that in a very secure way between clients and freelancers, making sure that no PII is shared in the process. And so we want to make sure, there's never a client out there who's going to ask for your bank account. Sorry, I should say a legitimate client out there who's going to ask for bank account information or credit card. So, at the time of their first job, they'll be validating that UPM, but going into that situation, just, have that flag up, be aware.
Absolutely. I've definitely had experiences with clients who are new to the platform and are unfamiliar with the processes and workflows. I view this as an opportunity to further build a relationship with the client in a trusted advisor type of role. Now, while it is initially a red flag, excuse me, that they are unverified, I typically wait for this to be verified by a consistency of red flag behavior. So just because one red flag goes up does not necessarily mean they're out of the question. They could just be ignorant of the processes and workflows. So an addition of a follow-up red flag that would totally trigger me would be like trying to take payments off of the platform when you've already told them we cannot do that. And if they're still insisting on going that direction, not good. Now, for everyone's reference here, the process for a client to become payment verified could not be simpler. So don't think it's some cumbersome 3-week process. What they have to do is they log into their Upwork account, click on settings in the dropdown under their user icon in the top right-hand corner. From there, on the left-hand side is a button for billing and payments, where the payment method can be added in a matter of moments. So remember, it is super important to ensure that you do not begin work on a client project prior to their payment method being verified. You can start a contract, you can interview, you can say, yeah, let's go forward, but don't do a minute of work until you know that they're verified, or else the payment protection is not going to be able to support you. If the client is unwilling to take this step, that would be a clear red flag to me to part ways with this potential client, and consider reporting the posting for further review from Upwork teams. So it's got a little bit of contextual awareness there. Let's take a look at our next one here. Next, we have the red flag of a quick hiring process. It seems like a particularly crafty type of scam. I know my eyes light up when I see a fantastic sounding job that looks ready to go. Caitlin, can you tell us what we should be looking for in this type of occurrence?
Yeah, so these scammers who are posting these types of jobs, and I would say, fraudsters in general, they know that as human beings, the more rushed or under pressure we are, the less likely we are to question unusual signals or to listen to that gut instinct. And that something just really doesn't feel right. So for this reason, scammers will apply pressure or tight time constraints with the intent to get freelancers to engage in risky activity that they might not otherwise if they just, had a night to sleep on it or to think over. And so, don't get me wrong, there are fantastic jobs out there that, to your point, Will, should make your eyes light up. However, this type of pressure to move rapidly or submit information before you miss out is to the scammer's benefit and unusual client activity.
Yeah, this really underscores the importance of taking a moment to understand the context of your potential clients and the jobs they're posting. I know many of us fall into the habit of trying to pump out a high volume of proposals with an aim to land more jobs. But as I've discussed in many of our other webinars, it is so important to take your time, not only to craft a well thought out proposal, but taking the time to get an overall understanding of the client themselves, their project, their experience on the platform, and their experience with other independent professionals. This acts with dual purpose, not only to make your proposals much more targeted and likely to succeed, but also will make these red flags stand out so we can avoid bad actors. I know when I first started putting out proposals, I was doing about, I want to say 30 a week, and I was not getting much responses because it was more of a copy and paste scenario, which I think all of us have fallen into that thing. But I've gotten into the habit now of sending only maybe 3, 4 a week, and they are highly targeted. I've done a bit of homework on the client. And as a side effect of doing that, it's also made these red flags stand out a lot more obtusely for me. So I'm able to avoid those. All right, our last major red flag for today is impersonating a known company. I can see how this can be a difficult situation to identify. And I know from personal experience how excited I get to work for companies or brands that I recognize, especially the large, well-known entities. Are there any methods in place that we can leverage to help protect ourselves in this type of situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the image on screen here to notate what our enterprise clients, how they're badged in our system. So a lot of those large companies are going to be badged in that way. And scammers have increased their efforts to spoof legitimate companies as they post fraudulent jobs. The logos and images used often closely resemble the information of the legitimate company. In some cases, the scammers use the identities of actual company employees to increase the perceived authenticity of the job posts. They may continue to use those identities in their interactions with the job seekers during the fraudulent interview and hiring process. Sorry, Will, were you going to say something there or no?
No, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Okay. It's for this reason that we can't stress enough how important it is to your safety to keep communications and payment on platform. Legitimate clients do not require your bank account information or credit card information for payment, as this is processed via Upwork for legitimate contracts, protecting your private, personal, and payment information in the process. So one note here is that enterprise clients are allowed to provide that type of direct contact. However, you need to notice that blue icon here to know that that's going to be okay.
That's a very important sort of asterisk in the no communications off platform sort of thing. So I'm going to repeat that just in case anyone missed that, because it's something that I was not aware of until I put together this content. So if a client is contacting you external to the workflow, that is against terms of service until you have a contract, unless they are an enterprise client and they have this blue little TARDIS box looking icon. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, perfect. Good to know. So now that we've gone through some red flags here and identified what some of the scams are, let's check out how do we report these. When it comes to trust and safety on Upwork, it is a community effort. Upwork has incredible teams, technologies, and processes in place which are constantly evolving to combat scam. But the power of crowdsourcing assistance from the front lines of our talent community really compounds the effectiveness of scam prevention as a whole. I personally have had an experience encountering a rather convincing scam occurrence in the past, but as some of the red flags sort of started showing up, like taking payments off platform and communications off platform, I knew it was time to report this user and this posting to Upwork. And I must say, I was really surprised and impressed at how easy the process was. It required so little of me, and I was impressed to see how quickly Upwork support teams took over and handled the situation. So let's walk through what those processes look like. So if you notice a suspicious job posting in the Upwork marketplace, there is the ability to flag as inappropriate along the right-hand side of the posting and under the submit a proposal button. Now, when you click this button, it brings up a secondary screen here where you can classify what category it falls into. In the instance of scam, we would want to select the job looks like a scam or contains a suspicious link and then hit submit. Now, it's important to note that regardless of what category you select here, all flagged items do get reviewed by our internal teams. So there's no need to be concerned if you're unsure which category to put it in or if it straddles two categories. No worries, it'll still get reviewed. So for instance, like if it has violations across multiple one of these and you can't select more than one, that's fine. Just make sure you get one of them in there and we'll check it out. Now, Kayla, once we go ahead and submit the suspicious scam, what additional steps are required of us as independent professionals? Are there more actions we needed to do? Do we need to take screenshots? Do we need to get a phone call? What do we have to do?
So we're going to take it from there. Once we receive these posts, we'll review and remove any violating content and the bad actors who have posted it from the platform as soon as we've confirmed that a violation has occurred. And Will, to what you're noting, if you're not sure which violation it has, like please make your best educated guess. If it comes into a queue and it's not the exact right queue, but it still looks suspicious, we're going to route it to the right team on our side.
Absolutely. Now, there was a question that came up in the Q&A here, and it's absolutely fine if you don't have this information fresh in your mind, but interesting question that I thought we would bring up. If someone is encountering a lot of potential scam and they're reporting a lot of them, like say in 1 hour of the day, I've sent 20 suspicious scam notifications, do I have to be worried about that earmarking me as potential scam, or is that unrelated?
Yeah, the flagging behaviors, of good customers does not, that has no detriment to your account or so forth. So please do not feel any hesitation to flag those. So yes,
Fantastic.
From that.
Yeah, that was a great question, and I had no idea what the answer was. So thank you.
For sure.
All right. So another way that we can report suspected scam is directly from the Upwork messaging system. You simply mouse over the text from the sender and click on the ellipses, that's the 3 dots at the end, on the right-hand side. And from the drop-down menu, which appears, click Report Message. Now, what comes to mind here, Caitlin, is something from the terms of service we all adhere to regarding keeping messaging on platform. Can you speak to this and the importance in processes of reporting and resolving scam?
Yeah, thank you, Will. So yes, reporting these messages is incredibly beneficial in trust and safety's effort to protect our customers. So, sometimes a job post can look totally, benign on the platform, but then we start to see this suspicious activity once it gets into dash messages. So our customers alerting us to that type of concern when it has moved into dash messages is incredibly helpful to our processes in removing these scammers so that they can stop doing any potential harm. We encourage all of you to keep messages on platform and flag those that appear suspicious to you.
Absolutely. And even I know in the terms of service, it says once you have a contract, you can take communications off platform. I very rarely do it. I've been working on Upwork for, gosh, maybe four and a half years now. And it's just easy to have everything in one spot. And anytime I need to contact support, I don't have to send them anything. I'm just like, hey, and then they can steal the information and hand it all for me. It's great, especially once I integrated Zoom and the different methods in platform. And there was no reason for me to take it off platform, and it just made my life a lot easier. Plus, that built-in notepad on the messaging system rocks.
That's great to hear.
All right, folks, let's get to some Q&A here. Okay, let me take a look. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we I know we pushed a lot of these to the end here. So let me see. This person is seeing a lot of job posts showing up lately about WhatsApp, Telegram, and other information, making it obviously a scam. Can those just get blocked?
Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that these have been really frustrating to see and have been a more recent method that we've been seeing where this really blatant type of behavior that hasn't been historically there for scammers on our platform. So an interesting one, of course, as we've chatted about here, trust and safety, our intent is to be incredibly proactive. Shared that, before, in general, 10 times of what we're removing is from proactive detections versus flags. And again, those flags are so important, but we do drive to proactively remove as much of this type of harmful content and suspected content before it's ever seen by our customers. So what I can say is that hopefully you've seen this get better in recent weeks. We've been committing incremental both engineering and operations resources over the last several months to mitigate this and be seeing the benefit there in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Now, there was a quick comment in the chat before I get to the next question that I thought was a very valid point, and I wanted to address real quick. Are there any jobs that show the payment verification badge and are still a legitimate job, or can they still be a scam if they have the payment verification badge? I would think that it would be less likely if they've associated credit card. That's an easy way to trace back to them. However, it coming from one of the ones that you were talking to us about earlier in the event of a laptop, like you could still have a verified payment and say, oh yeah, just send me $100, I'll send you a laptop. A scam could still occur, right? Even if they're payment verified. I would just argue that it's highly less likely. Oh, sorry, less likely, not highly, less likely.
Yes, I would say it is less likely, but one of the things that we know about scammers is that they are constantly changing their tactics to avoid detection and to, bring people in. And so what I would say is that even if you see somebody who's payment verified, if they're asking you to take communications off platform and they are not an enterprise client, if they are asking for what feels like inappropriate personal information or payment details, or asking for any type of payment for you as a freelancer, still not okay, regardless of whether or not that payment verification is there.
And another good question here that I actually had personally as well, someone brought up in chat. If I report a message or a posting, let's say messaging, I'm in the messaging system with a client and I report potential scam, does that notify the client that I did it? Or are they just notified by support? Like in the instance where I have a client who was not spam, but was acting very scammy, and I report them. Have I burnt that bridge, just out of curiosity?
No, you haven't. So when we are conducting those, the privacy of the flagger is protected there.
That's fantastic. That's really good to hear. Definitely would make me feel more confident in being proactive on flagging things, knowing that I'm not potentially burning down clients. Now, this user wants to know, what do we do when a new client's asked to meet off platform? New clients don't always know the rules, but this also seems like a dangerous occurrence and is often a big waste of time when they end up being a scammer. What do we do here?
Yeah, I would say definitely listen to your gut. And Will, as you were talking about that, it's an opportunity to really be, that professional guide to a new client where they're asking to meet off platform, where you can just let them know, hey, here are the rules of the road. However, what I will say is, as we noted before, in terms of messaging around being right in dash in the product to say, keep communications on platform, we're doing that on the client side as well as the freelancer side. So know that clients are getting those messages as well. And now it's always possible that a client may miss that nudge or that communication in the platform, but we are trying to proactively communicate that to clients so that hopefully you're not always having to do that education on your side. But if you are educating a client and saying, hey, that's not, quite okay here, we need to keep this in dash messages, and they're then resilient or get angry, chances are that's a really big red flag that you wouldn't want to work with that person, or they may be a scammer. So best there to move on.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Regardless of whether or not it is a scam or just a sort of obstinate personality type, probably don't want to work with you anyway if you're going to make life real difficult. So next question here. New freelancers are so vulnerable to getting scammed about issuing money first to buy something or send something before they get paid. This sounds like what we were talking about earlier. It's a very common scenario, and the amount of money they're shelling out is no joke. Most reports we have, there are $1,000 per case, and when this happens, the client is no longer responsive, and the freelancer just lost a huge sum of money. What can we expand upon in this section? I know it's a tough one.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really focusing on our side is that new freelancer education. And how do we make sure that new freelancers who may not yet know what to expect have opportunities like this webinar that'll be posted in the community. We're also sending direct dash messages to new freelancers who've just opened accounts to say, here's what to look out for, here's what's expected on the platform, to make sure that they know, hey, you need to keep communications here and that's for your safety. So being really clear about that and proactive in those communications out.
Absolutely. Let me see, more questions here. So this person's saying that there's a lot of scam postings in the marketplace and they're having a hard time searching for legit ones, probably on the newer side of a freelancer here. And clients are just reposting the same ones that they posted and removed already. So they're curious, what is Upwork doing to clean this up?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we're really looking at across 4 different teams that support trust and safety. So in the introduction, Will had introduced that I lead operations. We also have engineering, product management, and machine learning, who are all working in collaboration to really improve this. So hopefully you've seen over the last couple of weeks that those repetitive job posts have been on the decline. And again, our work here is not over. We're continuing to really focus in on this.
Absolutely. So this is the come up in quite a few different ways through the chat and the question here. Will Upwork start requiring payment verification before the first job posting? And will this be able to resolve a lot of potential scam?
So Will, and don't intentionally try to be big here, but one of the things that I think I mentioned earlier in our call is that the countermeasures we may take, we will likely be very private about because scammers will then know that in advance. However, I will say we are really mindful in thinking about the balance between onboarding ease and reducing fraud. And so it's definitely considering a number of options.
Absolutely. And this is something we touched on a little bit earlier, but I feel like it's worth diving back into. Are flags actually reviewed? Some people may feel like once they flag it, it just goes into the void. Can you speak to that?
Yes, we review all member flags and they are incredibly important to our operations. So we look at flags across job posts, dash messages, profiles, etc. Those all come into our operations team and we are staffed 24/7 to review those.
Absolutely. Very good. I'm filtering through some more questions here. There's a lot of similar themed topic ones, so bear with me as I just try and find some fresh ones for us. Will there be a recording of this session available on demand? Absolutely. I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now. I'm actually going to drop a few links for everyone. So the first one we have here, let me just get this back up here. All of our previous events, like and this one and any future events we have, you can see coming up in the link I'm putting into chat now. This is where you can see the recording of this events. We have expert speakers on a variety of topics, a lot of how to do good proposals, how to do good profiles, all that good stuff. I would bookmark that link, get it tattooed, right on the forehead, whatever you need. There's gold in there, I promise you. So definitely bookmark it. Have it on as a podcast type in experience in the background. Let me see here. There's another one. I'm going to drop a few articles while we're on this topic. There's a support article here on further information on reporting suspected scam. That's a good one. A lot of that information we've gone through here, but maybe you want to hear it in a different voice, read it in a different voice, whatever you like. And here is also another link on just general information on staying safe on Upwork. It has a lot of different subcategories on different sort of interactions. Very good to review. I know this can be a very dry topic, but it is so important, especially when it's your business, your finances, and your success. So take a bit of time, become aware of these types of things. And if you have additional questions, the community is a great place to start for crowdsourcing information. If it's more technical in nature, reach out directly to support. But either way, there's a lot of resources available to you. And this event was sort of trying to highlight those and make them more available. So let me filter through some of our questions here. And thank you so much for all the kind words in the chat here. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of people on this event, I know the chat is limited so that only we can see all the chat. But a lot of people have experienced scam and difficulties in their business. And I know that can be a very stressful thing, especially when you've just pivoted to becoming an independent professional or whatever your situation can be. So thank you for joining this event and having the patience and working with us. We're in this with you, okay? Let me see here. It's a good question. Does Upwork allow or tolerate clients who are using the platform as nothing more than a mechanism to get freelancers to complete web surveys as respondents in exchange for money? If I'm not mistaken, that is directly against the terms of service of Upwork. I don't believe you're allowed to hire people to do that. I think you also cannot hire people to do your homework, if I remember correctly, like if you're in university. Does that ring a bell, Caitlin?
That latter is definitely correct. I would want to look at the job post for the first in terms of what the scenario was there with surveys, but yes, definitely a no on academic integrity.
Absolutely, and that's good. We don't really want that anyway. Let's see. Question here, is it okay to continue work communications with email? I'm interpreting that question as, once I have the contract, am I allowed to take the communications off platform to just email? Yes, you're allowed to. Would I recommend it? No, I would not recommend it. But absolutely, I do have one or two clients that just their workflow, they need it to be an email. They're too busy. They can't be on platform. We have limited communications there. But again, I waited until that contract was in place. And then I established on the on-platform messaging, hey, you'd prefer to work through emails directly? Okay, great. We established that communication, but in a verified place. So there are steps to take to go ahead and set yourself up for success. But again, I would recommend as a best practice to keep as many communications as you can on platform.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Will, just not only for keeping yourself safe, but also just for ease of use and making sure that there's really clear communications and something's not missed because it was shared in a different channel.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know if you do, Caitlin, but it's fine if you don't. But is it possible in the job filtering section to filter by only people that have payment verified? I believe that is one of the filters.
That is correct. Yes, you can do that.
Good, good. And again, I've had some of my best clients were not payment verified when I first got there. It just took that extra step of making sure I had my bumper lane set up and guiding them down the process. And as a result of holding their hand, these are clients I've been working with for 3 years. So it can be good, but I understand why you would want to filter shortlist it, especially when you're new to the platform and being more heavily targeted by these scam potentials. For those of you dropping questions in the chat section, it's way easier for me to track if you put it in the Q&A. So I'll do my best to get to them. A lot of people asking about unverified payment methods. We've talked about that. Yes, they're worth taking a crack. Look out for multiple red flags and just be aware of the terms of service and that accordingly. There was a question here, I think I saw it in the chat earlier, regarding if a client is trying to get you to sign an NDA external to Upwork's, embedded sort of contracts. If they're trying to get you to sign an NDA with suspect language in it, would that be something that you would suggest that they report or flag as well? Or is that something that you would recommend that they seek external legal advice on reviewing the contract, or maybe both?
Yeah, I would say, and sorry for the context here, I think it would depend on what that type of suspect language was. If it was more just legally leaning that, hey, this seems like it may be more beneficial to the client than to myself, third-party legal makes a lot of sense there. If it's anything like we've talked about here, where they're requesting any type of payment or PII that feels, sorry, again, personal identifiable information through that NDA that feels odd to you or uncomfortable, and a contract hasn't yet been established, or the client is new, definitely something you're welcome to flag to our teams. And while we won't provide that legal advice, we can certainly take a look at the account and see if there's anything concerning there.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a question here. I'm just reading through it, find the best way to rephrase this. Okay, so this person encountered a scam posting that was posing as a large entity. So how do you know when a large company is being spoofed? Like if I'm looking at the proposal and it says, let's just use the name Microsoft, just throwing a name out there. What are some of the steps I can take to confirm that while still working in the terms of service? It's a bit of a murky area, so feel free to say this is something we can't really dive into, but do you have any recommendations or suggestions?
Yeah, for the example of Microsoft, look for that, blue icon there, and know that, for that security. However, what we would still expect that we'd likely see, and while some of these folks are really doing quite a good job of faking these out, comparing that to, okay, what does this look like externally and so forth. But they're also going to be, if they're moving conversations off of the platform or still doing anything suspicious, and they don't have that blue icon, definitely a no-go zone. And if they object to keeping communications on, really concerning. So, definitely
Yeah.
still those rules of the road of keep communications and payment off platform is going to keep you safe.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a tough one. As we said multiple times throughout this presentation, some of these are very sophisticated attempts where they've done all their homework. They know the right names. They know the right profile picture to have up, whatever the case may be. So definitely erring on the side of caution is advisable. And as we discovered earlier, there's no detriment to flagging potential suspected scam. So maybe in that situation, sort of reporting it, being like, I don't know. And then we can have the pros take a look and be like, oh yeah, this is not legit. So that would be maybe another suggestion, considering there's no detriment to us on that side of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is one that's come up quite a bit, and I want to provide some context on this. If a client asks me to buy a product and then promises to reimburse me through a bonus, for example, buy something on Amazon to write a review, is that scam? I would say there may be one or two people that this is not a scam. I would assume every single one is a scam. Any client that is asking money to go this way rather than this way is a hard pass for me. There is no job that I would be willing to take where I have to pay the client, especially not first. that's that's just a hard stop for me. Do you think that's sort of a good policy there, Kaylin?
Yeah, I do think that is a good policy. Anything where, the money is flowing from talent to client as opposed to the other direction is concerning. I'd also be concerned there that they're asking for a potentially non-legitimate review in exchange for that purchase, which is not okay for our clients to be doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Just sifting through a bunch of questions here, folks. You guys have got a fantastic amount of questions. It's awesome.
Yeah, loving the engagement today. Thank you all
Yeah,
so much.
it's such an important topic. So what are dash messages? When we're talking about dash messages in the Upwork.com interface, when you're talking to the client and you go to the messages section, that is a dash messaging. That's what it's sort of short for in dash messaging. That's what we're referring to. Bit of context for us. This is a great question. Anastasia, I like the way you think. What do I do if I only realized that it was a scam after I submitted a proposal and had an interview? Is there a way to let the system know that it was a scam?
Yeah, so whether you want to do that, if the job is no longer up, but you've got dash messages with that individual or their profile is up, you're welcome to flag either, and we'll speedily review that. But we would recommend definitely cutting off contact right then and there, not continuing with any work because we would not want you to be wasting your time. So that's the recommendation there. But even if the job's not still up, you have options to flag that via either dash messages or the profile.
Yeah, absolutely. To another place you could probably find it, like let's say you haven't had the interview yet and you sent a proposal and then you're like, wait a minute, that was totally a scam. You can actually check your previously sent proposals. So if you go through the menus on the top right, you can go to your previously sent proposals, active proposals, archived proposals, wherever it may stand, and that can find you the actual posting where you can go ahead and report if needs be. It's a great question. Another good one here. Thanks for the invaluable information. You are welcome. Thank you for joining. Is there any way that we can get feedback on the reports that we're making? If we report a potential scam, do we have a way to know if we're reporting correctly? Is there any sort of confirmation or follow-up from the system? It's been years since I reported someone, so I'm not familiar with this. Are you, Caitlin?
So what I will say is that we are looking into how we improve the user experience around our flags. And so I'll definitely take note of that for our product teams. Won't make any promises in this call today, but definitely of note around that feedback. One thing we may, just need to consider is that as a two-sided marketplace, just making sure that we are protecting the confidentiality of our users. And so depending on what something is being flagged for, our ability to communicate back on what actions we take privacy really seriously. So we may need to make some considerations there in terms of what we share back.
Absolutely. There's a comment here that I wanted to address in the questions, because I understand this is probably coming from a point of frustration. I completely understand. Why does a platform place an undue burden of identifying fraud upon the freelancers? And I want to come back to something that Caitlin shared with us earlier. While we may be seeing quite a lot and reporting them, 10 times that at least is being caught by the automated systems in the background. So it has been plaguing us, and not just us on Upwork. This is any online platform is experiencing this boost, as what Caitlin was describing earlier. So I completely understand the frustration, and it may feel like it's just slogging through it at this time, but the processes are in place. It is getting a lot better. Using these techniques will help filter it out. And there is just an undeniable truth from my experience, at least, that as you get more experienced on the platform, you become top rated, perhaps, things like that. You don't see nearly as much of those scam postings, because they're truly, from my perspective, not speaking on Upwork's behalf, but from my perspective, I think they're more targeted to people that are new on the platform that may be unfamiliar with the processes or what to look for. When you've been on the platform for a few years and you've had a lot of good clients and a few bad ones, you can easily spot those, and they don't have much success rate. So have some patience, work with us, keep reporting, but it may feel like the burden is on the people on the system like you and I, but trust me, we're swimming real hard on the back end. Promise you that.
Thank you, Will, and definitely hear that concern there, and do know our teams are incredibly hard at work. We take this so seriously, company-wide priority, huge cross-functional effort, and one of our biggest initiatives right now to focus on.
Absolutely. Another question here regarding something we covered earlier. When jobs are asking to connect with Telegram or WhatsApp with a link, are they genuine? Probably not. Probably not. And what I would say is that I would be on a bit of the aggressive side and say, nope, blanket statement, don't use it. If for some reason you feel absolutely tickled to respond, inform them that no, payment has to be on the system. And if they say, cool, great, maybe they're legit. But if they still say no, Telegram, WhatsApp, you know it's a red flag. Don't waste your time. There's so many beautiful clients out there that would love to work with you and love to pay you. No point wasting time on clients that are in the maybe or the suspect or unwilling to work within the confines that we are held to for trust and safety. Okay, so don't feel like you have to get every single client if you're suspect. There's masses of good clients out there, I promise you. All right, we may have time to squeeze in one or two more questions here. There's a couple people here all asking about account suspensions. Not really the topic we're talking about in this presentation. Very important topic. I would guide you to reach out to Upwork support. There is a process for that. It does not happen overnight, I promise you, just because of the sheer volume of people around the world that we're working on. But definitely submit your case to support. They will reach out and they will get the situation resolved. It happens sometimes. With all the automated protections we have on the back end, there has to be a line drawn somewhere. And occasionally that can catch someone when they maybe should not have been caught, but we're always doing our best to resolve that. So have some patience there, but definitely do submit that to support. Not really a topic we're going to focus on here though. Okay, apologies. It's a great question, Ellen. You nailed it on the head here. That's actually an important topic. What about all the posts that are hiring for actual full-time jobs, not freelance projects? Are those scam? Are those increasing, decreasing? And I will say, from my perspective, Caitlin, before you jump in here, I'm seeing a lot more of these. A lot more people that are coming to Upwork, not necessarily just for a part-time freelancer, but hey, we need a full-stack web developer that's available 40 hours a week. I love it. I love it. Now I have less jobs and more money. It's great. Kayla, do you have any commentary on that?
Yeah, I would say just again, always just observe any red flags in that, because I think, again, that can be one that, not saying those are scam by any means, but like ones that are intended to make your eyes light up. So if there's anything else about it that seems really odd, that full-time job is potentially like much higher than the average rate for that area of work, for example, those tactics that are intended to draw folks in. So if it's astronomically higher than what you would expect to see, based on the type of full-time work, or anything like that, the moving communications off platform, requesting payment for equipment, anything like that, definitely just pay attention to those red flags, because it could be a eyes light up kind of moment.
Absolutely. This actually ties into another good question here, which might be a bit of a gray area, but I'll speak to it from my experience at least. I'm terrified to open any links I'm assuming in job postings. Is it wise to open the job description or samples links? I will say from my experience on here, I've had that same fear. What if I'm opening what looks like a PDF attachment and it's actually some sort of virus that wipes out my computer? That's terrifying, and I'm nervous about it. I will say, I also know that in the messaging system, in Dash messaging, as we were talking before, whenever I attach a document, I can see when it's loading, it also scans for some sort of virus and malware attachment. I'm assuming some sort of thing is taking place on the posting side. Do you know if that's true or not, Caitlin?
Yeah, so another great benefit of keeping those communications on platform, whether it's before or after a contract, is that we do provide that service through Dash messages to scan for malware. And so that's something that if you're using Dash messages, you're going to be more protected for.
Absolutely. And again, with a bit of asterisk on there, always use some base logic when approaching things. If it doesn't smell right, it doesn't seem consistent, opt out. If it's taking you to a site that is not secured and then asking you to put in some information, probably don't do it. So, but it's good to know that there are some layers of security on there, because I was very nervous about that as well. The sheer amount of random companies' information that I've opened up in attachments when I haven't even worked for them yet, just inputting proposals. There's a huge volume of documents I've downloaded and opened. And I'm like, I really hope this doesn't melt the only machine I have to do my work. So very good topic. And I also, in addition to, this is a personal best practice, whenever I download, let's say it's a PDF for I'm a graphic designer, so I get a lot of corporate branding guides, PDFs. I'll download it. Before I open it, I do my own additional scan on it. I know Upwork's done its own scan, but never hurts to do two. And it takes all of a second. There's a million different programs out there that do it. So whatever you have inherently on there, I think even Windows Defender has the ability to scan specific files. But I do that as a best practice, just because this is my livelihood, this machine right here. If it croaks, I'm in a bad way.
Really wise advice. Thank you all.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. Sometimes clients test freelancers to see if they're legit. Is there something to be wary of? I think what this person is saying is they're looking for a test project. So for instance, in a graphic design silo that I work with, they want to hire me to do, let's just say, a whole website redesign. But before they invest $6,000 in this, they want to know, am I worth my salt? So they may ask for a test project. Yes, this happens, especially in the higher budget items or with people that are new on the platform. I've seen plenty of this. However, and I've discussed this in a lot of the webinars I've done, never give your work away for free. It's for a variety of reasons. The number one being, if you don't respect your time, no one else will. But it's also against the terms of service for clients to ask people to ask for free work. So in the event that a client wants to do a test run before they buy the main event, that's fine. Let's make a milestone. Let's make a small milestone, $100, $20, it doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure that they're willing to actually commit money to your time, whatever your hourly rate is. So if they want me to do a test design of designing a little logo before I do the rest, great, that's fine, but you're going to pay for it.
Absolutely.
So is that in alignment with your understanding there too, Caitlin?
Yes, it is, Will. Spot on that. Not okay by our terms of service, and an area that trust and safety looks out for as well.
Yeah, and that's actually the way I lean on it when people have asked me, hey, well, why don't you just, mock me up a few examples? And I say, I can't do that for free. It's against the terms of service. And I know that, and I need to respect my time as a professional. And then if they're unwilling to spend a small amount of money with me up front, then I don't really want to work with them, because they're going to nickel and dime me the rest of the time. I found that my best clients were happy to pay me for the work, because they're here to hire a professional, not to try and scrimp and save a few dollars here and there. They're looking for a professional to do this. And in doing so, they should be willing to pay for a professional, or else what are we doing here? All right, we're running out of time here. I know there's so many fantastic questions. I just wanted to pop a few more links into the chat here. I'm going to do these all at once, see if this works. So we have 3 different links. We have the top one is where we can see previous events and recordings, including this event, will be up there in about a day or 2, using the same link you used to register with. But check out these events. We have so many events around the world, so valuable, variety of different topics. There's a few support articles on how to report suspected scam, and then just how to stay safe on the platform. I want to thank everyone so much for taking the time joining us today on this topic. I hope this has been fruitful for you. I hope this makes you feel more confident when out there in the marketplace. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to us through the community section, variety of different vehicles for it. I want to say special thank you, Caitlin, for joining us and walking us through this absolutely important information. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you all to our wonderful talent. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, folks, that's all for now. Feel free to look out for the next event, and we look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye and have a great rest of the week.